Welcome to Deep Transformation, Self-Society Spirit. I'm Roger Walsh, and our co-host is John Dupuy. And our guest today is again, we are delighted to have with us once again for our 11th dialogue, Hameed Ali, whose pen name is A.H. Almaas, founder of the Diamond Approach, author of multiple books, and particularly the one we're working through in this series, The Inner Journey Home, which provides an overview of his thinking, his teaching, his practice as laid out in the Diamond Approach. And we are moving to another literally another dimension today, because the Diamond Approach lays out the idea that true nature, our true nature, reveals itself as many different dimensions or aspects or flavors, and focuses in particular on 5 boundless dimensions. And Hameed, I'm going to quote something you said about these. You said, to give a detailed exposition of the 5 boundless dimensions would require 5 books as big as this one. And the Inner Journey Home is 700 pages. So there's obviously a lot to say about each of these boundless dimensions. But you begin with the boundless dimension, which you describe as love and light. So perhaps you could just give us an overview of the 5 boundless dimensions, and then segue into this particular one.
Yeah, it is true. We are transitioning to a different part of the teaching. If you remember, the teaching has different turnings. I call them turnings, so it's a wheel of the teaching. So we've been working with the first turning. This is the second turning. This is the beginning of the second turning. So second turning consists mostly of the teaching of the what I call boundless dimension. I'll explain in a minute what I mean by boundless. And it has also 2 journeys in it. There's a journey of ascent and journey of descent, which is also classical in many mystical teachings about ascent and descent. So learning about the 5 dimensions is a journey of ascent, going sort of deeper or higher or subtler. And then the descent is how to integrate from the top into everyday life. So in this teaching, the first emerged in a full way is what I ended up calling divine love. Boundless dimension of divine love, which is love and light inseparable. I remember the first time I had the full experience of it. I've experienced love and stuff many times before in different ways, and even love everywhere I've experienced before. But this is was interesting kind of emergence, because when the boundless dimension emerges shows itself and shows us the obstacles against it, challenges them, reveals them, and shows more and more about itself until it becomes integrated as one, as what we experience, as what we are, continuously. So the first thing, the one that happened that way, for me at least, is the dimension of love. And it is love that's not just love in the heart, but love everywhere. As I said, I remember the first time I experienced it, maybe that will be instructive. I We were traveling, my wife and me, to Hawaii. We were in Maui, and we just arrived at Hana, Maui. It's a beautiful jungly place
Mhm.
with you smell all those yeah, wonderful aromas of the tropical forest. And then we arrived, we were driving, so I was tired. I went to the bedroom and to rest. I turned on the TV just to look to pass time. And it wasn't nothing unusual on TV, some shows, but I felt I was in the TV. I was inside there. I was struck by that. What does that mean? I'm there, like I'm there in the film. You know. So that's interesting. So turned on TV, went out. Uh, guava trees and things like that. And as the smelling thing, I start feeling I'm also on the tree. I'm in the, over here, I'm over there. I realize I'm not, I'm everywhere. And I said, what does that mean? I'm everywhere. And here, when I start feeling everything filling out with some kind of a richness, golden richness, that was starting to fill out everywhere. So what I was seeing, over here, over there, turned out to be some kind of a consciousness, some kind of a medium of consciousness, meaning conscious medium, which I know from my experience of presence. But it wasn't just localized, not in the body or containing the body or the room, but it was in the whole environment. And then I saw that everything was dripping with that love. All the trees, first they're dripping, they're made out of it. And first it looked like light, golden light, and then I realized it's sweet, and it was melty kind of sweetness and lovingness, and has appreciation, blissfulness, um, yummy kind of quality to it. Very satisfying, yummy quality. And it was like filling the whole atmosphere, the whole context, everywhere I looked. And it was, so it wasn't like appearing through different things. It was one thing, one ocean of um, loving consciousness. That was everywhere, pervading everything, constituting everything. Even the fruits were made out of it. Trees were made out of it. My body was made out of it. So, so that for me, that was a jump, a quantum leap into experiencing presence. I'm experiencing presence here, but this is what I call boundless presence. Some people call it universal or infinite. I call it boundless in the sense it has no boundary, it doesn't end. Because really you can't see, infinitely. You can only see our environment to seeing and feeling. I mean, you could feel like it has no end, and it's both infuses everything, bathes everything. Um, but the exquisite feeling of lovingness, like the love was like just there. The nature of reality was like a lovingness. Nature of reality was like a lovingness. And it's also light, like a luminous light, luminous golden light. So I could see it as light, but I feel it as love. But it's also a presence. It's a rich but delicate presence, not like dense and solid. It wasn't like that. It was flowing, uh, effulging. And and it feels everywhere. So the impression you get when experiencing this is that it's everywhere. It's everywhere I perceive, but the feeling is she must be everywhere. The whole universe is made out of it, and that's how I experienced it then. That's how I believed it then. That the whole universe is made out of love. The whole love. The whole universe not only made out of, it exudes love. And
Well, that's an incredibly powerful experience. I mean, that basically changes everything from an existential fear into, oh my God, it's all love.
yeah, all is love.
It's so, you know, I told you a few conversations ago that my original experience when I was 11, I had something similar to that. All of a sudden, experiences, God was everywhere and God was love. And I was like, holy cow, it's like 11 years old. And
Yeah,
why didn't anybody tell me this? You know, it's the most important thing you can know. And you call it the boundless ocean of love and light, of light and love. And George Fox, the founder of the Quakers, said God is an endless ocean of love and light. Almost the exact same thing that you were saying there. So I was always admirer of the Quakers and what they've done in the world, and that's
yeah,
very, very similar to what you experienced.
yeah. So my experience of it is not unique because many have experienced it. Many teachings actually include it as an important part of the teaching, depending on what the teaching is. Quakers probably very central to them. It's central to the Sufis, like that's all they deal with. They talk about love. You read Rumi, I mean, that's basically what he's saying in more different ways. Here is a direct experience, and it is not a thought or a belief or emotion. It's a presence, but it is also people talk about consciousness, universal consciousness or cosmic consciousness. It is consciousness because it's made out of consciousness. But this consciousness has the flavor of love. It's a conscious love. It's a medium of pure consciousness, conscious of itself, but knows itself as feels itself and knows itself as a kind of love that lights up the world. And it is, I remember thinking, well, if everybody knows this, the world will be at peace. Nobody will do anything bad to anybody else. I mean, everybody will be happy, contented, and feel loved and loving. But it is a potential for a human being to experience this, obviously. Now, there are many things, I think that there's a whole chapter written there about it, detailed different things. And but the most important thing is that it is what's called non-dual. And the non-dual here is a full non-duality. Doesn't mean just non-duality between subject and object. There's no subject. There's just one thing that is both subject and object is aware of itself. But also, nothing is separate from anything else. That's really the main meaning of non-duality. There's no separation because everything is that thing, one indivisible medium of loving consciousness. So, I mean, we could say it pervades everything. We could say it exudes from everything, but we could also say it makes up everything. I mean, all these are true depending on the experience. And it has a sense in it of giving, generosity, like the universe is being generous, giving out of its heart. And as I said, the feeling and the perception is as far as I can see, as far as I can feel. And then the feeling that it is infinite. And then it took me years to realize to say it's infinite is really a subjective feeling. We don't know it's infinite or not. We only know we can't see the end. You know, because a human being really never experience infinity, if you think of it. Can you ever experience an infinite line, see an infinite line, for instance?
Mm.
You never see the infinite line. You know that line doesn't end. But so later on, I got to see that, well, it is true, and it's probably true, it's everywhere, but it is like our mind, our psychic, it can't help but um, come to this conclusion that it is the whole universe, everything is like that. And which is how it feels. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
the feeling also, and it is always there. And why isn't nobody experiences it? This is always there, available, and people just are not in touch with it. It took me I got all the way to the fourth turning before I realized it is really to say it's always there is problematic in some sense, because that's not how most people experience things. They don't experience. Most people, they say, "What is it?" They doubt God and whether there is a God, whether there is love everywhere. And I got to, at some point, to say it is potentially there everywhere, and it appears that way for the one who's ready.
That seems a very crucial point, Hameed, because there are, in multiple traditions, there's this implication that, well, in the monotheistic traditions, God is always there and available, and in, for example, Dzogchen, Rigpa, that is pure awareness, is always present but obscured by our thoughts and obscurations, etc. And the question for me has been, well, yeah, presumably, I mean, there's a sense to that, but how can I know that for sure?
Yeah, that's takes a great deal of experience and investigation and contemplation to come to see that the experience itself does not really say. It is,
Yeah,
it's the feeling how real it is, how fundamental that makes the mind believe it must be always there. And in some sense, it's always there, but not manifest,
yeah,
except for the one who's capable of experiencing it. Then it manifests. It manifests, and so the individual consciousness is very important for experiencing it as everywhere. You see, not everybody experiences it that way. And well, the one reason why I got to get to this understanding, Roger, is that there are many things, many dimensions that appear and feels it's always there. And as you know, many teaching they think they're their ultimate, which they define it is always there, and then which one is right then? So, like seeing that, well, it is potentially there because it is inherent in true nature to have this quality, and true nature, the nature of everything. However, we don't always see it as the nature of everything until it's manifest to the consciousness that are ripe enough for it. And when we see it, then it can manifest any of its possibilities to that consciousness that is ripened. And then it feels, and we see it, so potential is everywhere, but it doesn't mean everywhere in the sense that it's going to impact everybody the way it's impacting me, because other people are not aware and are not impacted, you know. Maybe people who are around me because how I am and I'm behaving and they get impacted. But, the rest of the world have no idea that there is this experience happening, or there is this ocean of divine love that is available for everybody. So what we can say is available for everybody. And it is potentially possible for every human being not to only experience it, but to experience it as constituting everything, as the nature of everything. As, yeah.
And you speak, Hameed, or you write in your book of the different ways in which this can be experienced, and it seems like different degrees of depth. You speak of saying the soul can experience being conscious light that witnesses everything, but beyond that, then then there can be the experience you're talking about, that this pure love light is the ground of everything. So it seems like there are degrees of realization here you're pointing to.
Yeah, so the person can realize in different degrees in terms of how complete the experience is, how fully pervades everything. And so the book mentions 5 boundless dimensions. This is one of them, the first one that emerges. In fact, the easiest to relate to for human being, easy for them to relate to love, not to awareness or emptiness or anything like that. Those seem to be abstract for human being. But love, everybody wants love, want to be loved, and so it's a welcome experience usually, and easier to relate to, easier to open up to, and but when I mentioned 5 boundless dimension, I mean dimension, they're not dimension like spatial dimension, not like intersecting each other. It's more like they're dimension in the sense that each one of them is a little subtler, a little more has more fundamental, but they're all really there all at the same time, although we might not be aware of them all at the same time. Meaning they're all implicitly in true nature. And there are probably also other dimensions beside the 5. I focus on those 5 in the teaching. There are probably many. But the idea here is, even though this is a non-dual consciousness, I'm saying that 5 dimensions basically point to the fact that non-dual consciousness has dimensions. Just consciousness as non-dual, or awareness non-dual. No, it has also other dimensions. It can be pure love, can be pure beingness, or thing like that. And I said, as I said, there might be more than 5. I focus, my experience focus mostly in the 5. It begins with this, which is, I think, is a good one to start with and explore the bound dimension, because it is the one human being in general, they're not indoctrinated by some kind of a teaching that tells them you have to be to experience emptiness or awareness or this consciousness. Human beings, they welcome love, they want love. And the difficulty with it is not what quality it is, but that it dissolves everything. and dissolve all restriction and dissolve all definitions of
And
oneself.
projections, you also said it dissolves your projections. It's love.
Yeah. Dissolve all your projection in the world, yeah, because everything is not what we project as. It is, but you know, I think the chapter brings out many of the challenges and the obstacles that are in the way. The main one, of course, which is true about all the boundless dimension, true about non-dual experience in the sense of separateness. That being a human soul, you are a separate drop, sort of, you're a separate entity. This dimension challenges that belief or identification with separate, with entityhood. I call it entityhood. And this shows that although the soul is individual, it's not separate from the rest of reality. And this dimension shows the lack of separateness, that we're all expression of the same thing. So we can experience the soul in this dimension, or the soul might be submerged in it, you know. And that's the different ways of experiencing it, brings a different way of experiencing it. So,
Hameed, yeah, may I, you mentioned that people can have this experience of love, you know, God is endless ocean, boundless ocean of love and light. But we lose the vision, like the Grail castle, you know, the young Percival finds the castle, then he loses a vision and goes throughout his life searching to find the castle again. And you talk about all our efforts to try to get back to that boundless dimension can often just reinforce the boundaries. And ultimately, it's when we surrender or when we're ready for it that the will of true nature itself is what does it. Is that accurate or somewhat
yes,
in the neighborhood?
it is, yeah, accurate. We cannot make it happen. It is an emergence. It is a revelation. Like basically the essential presence reveal itself to be unbounded, that has no edges, no boundaries, because when you think about it, even when we experience the presence in the body, if you recognize it is not physical, why will the physical bound it? Why will the physical limit it? Because it's not physical. It's deeper than the physical. So it's only because part of the ego structure is the sense of being a bounded entity, you know, a separate entity with a shape and size and all of that, that we experience the presence as bounded. And this basically dissolves those boundaries. And that is the first challenge, because many people don't want to lose those boundaries. They lose their definition of themselves. And that is scary. It can bring in terror and fear and trembling and all kinds of things.
Or on the other hand, they may want to come back. They may not want to come back and be themselves again. Once you've experienced this, why would you want to go back and be, you know, me or John or Roger?
Well, it's true. The experience, when you are fully in the experience, you feel like that's wonderful. Why be anything else? But the 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 movement towards separateness is natural, inherent to the soul. Has been imprinted on it. It's not like consciously you feel you want to be separate. You can't help, but the separateness comes out because there's a structure that's imprinted in the soul from years and years of experience. That I'm this individual, a human individual, mean bounded by the body, the shape of the body, the size of the body. So that is, so it's not a choice. It's not like I don't. You might feel you don't want it to come, but it will come anyway.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have to deal. You have to deal.
Sorry.
that about why is it that I have this boundary? And that brings in a whole understanding. What is ego, what I call ego boundaries? Ego limiting boundary that give us size and shape and that because that's the whole history, that the whole imprinting and conditioning, and of course everybody believes it, all of humanity believes it, so it is supported by everybody else. If you tell your family and friends, well, I'm not an individual, I'm everywhere, they'll think, what the hell are you talking about? You know what happened? You
Yeah.
lost your mind. I mean, uh, um, so so it's not a matter of what we wish. When we are in that experience, of course, you don't want to be anything else. It feels wonderful and natural and relaxed and easy and contented and full of goodness and satisfaction and pleasure. And so, of course, but the issues arise anyway.
And Hameed, you point out that actually this experience of boundless love, of loving light, can actually highlight the barriers and blocks to it. And it seems as a general principle here, so let me lay out the general principle I see you speaking to, and then the specific one. The general principle seems to be that when there is, when one either tries to cultivate a particular quality such as love, or if when it emerges spontaneously, there is often the upwelling of the blocks and barriers to it. And one faces those. And you talk about what John was alluding to, that as the soul becomes aware of its boundless nature and of this pure love, it begins to feel even more constricted by comparison. And then, as John said, desperately tries to overcome this feeling of constriction and separation, but only digs itself deeper into it. And you make the really crucial point that this existential sense of needing to escape the sense of separation and boundedness exacerbates the issue and requires this profound letting go. That seems a really crucial point.
Yeah. Yeah, very true, Roger. I mean, that's what happens with everybody. And it's like, some people talk about their experience as if this happens, it dissolves all the barriers just by having the experience. It's not true. It's not my experience. It's not the experience of all the people I work with. It's not the experience of the actual real tradition. You know, so those people who call themselves nondual teacher or whatever, they say, "Oh, I had the experience and everything." And they're still an ego. The way they're talking is an ego talking, actually. So yes, we need, and that is, but there are many ways of working with the barriers. Different teachings have developed different things. Like many teachings are based on love. They talk about surrender and prayer and surrender and letting go and all of that. And but you see, but surrender, even you recognize yourself as an individual, as somebody who's bound and contracted. And then at some point there's a movement towards surrender. But that one path, the devotional paths are like that, and they do practices, chanting and prayers and this and that to help with that. The method of this teaching continues to be inquiry. We inquire into those obstacles to understand them. And then, so the separateness, we inquire into it, we realize it is actually like a boundary made out, a boundary, rigid boundary that has always been there for all the years. It's usually unconscious. Now it becomes conscious. An actual boundary that feels hardened, that feels sort of unchanging, And usually you have the shape of the body or the size of the body, because the body, we identify with the body for such a long time. That identification leaves a deep, strong imprint in the soul and the consciousness. So the consciousness can't just say, I want to drop it. It need to. So the inquiry help us understand it and how it happened. Understand that it is a boundary around the soul, around our consciousness that defines us all this time, had defined who and what we are as an individual. So, and recognizing what are the fear of letting go of that. You have to see what are the fear, what are the there's attachment to it, because this is my definition, that's who I am. If that's gone, that I am gone, right? And even though people love God, they want to be there with God. And here you're not going to be there with God, it's just God.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So there's an attachment to the individual, and also then there's also fear of losing it, because like you'll be people afraid of being lost, being not knowing, they can't operate, they're afraid of not being able to function if they're not because the individual is what function, what does thing, take care of thing. Well, if that's gone, who's going to drive the car? Right? Who's gonna do things? Who's gonna do the taxes and all this stuff? So people have all these fear, which makes sense. People have those fear because you do need to do these things. That's because we still don't understand how these things happening from this dimension. Because we don't understand them, we have all these fears, all these, and also history comes into it. Like somebody who was so traumatized or abused or whatever, their identification with the victim, identification with the traumatized person or the abused person is so strong that they are this scared, hurt kid or individual. And they can't just let it go. It is imprinted in them. There is a very deep unconscious conviction that that is what I am. And that is exposed here. If you stay with it and understand that this kind of dimension can expose all the parts of the ego structure that makes us be a limited entity.
And it
Yeah,
seems like,
my
sorry, go
my
ahead.
understanding, Hameed, is that when we're talking about the actualization, that the boundaries are going to be there so somebody can drive the car, but they have to be porous boundaries. In other words, boundaries that connect us instead of separate us, that unifies, that helps us to be Hameed and be an endless, boundless ocean of light and love at the same time. Is that kind of where we're going with this, or what happens?
Not exactly. Boundaries can dissolve and there'll be no more boundaries, but the functioning can continue to happen. And there are different ways it happens from this dimension that people don't know how it works. And it's a discovery. First, you discover the ocean of love, and the next discovery, the actualization, which means to discover how life is lived. Who lives it? What and there are many different ways that we can see it. So it's not the boundaries can't dissolve. If people who haven't worked through their boundaries, when it's come to functioning, the boundaries come back and then become a separate individual again
Yeah.
to live their life. So they could experience this once in a while when they don't have to when they have to function, the doer comes back and to take care of things. Unless you work on the boundaries, on the doer, and able to understand them and let them go. So as we understand them, we don't let them go. They just let go. They dissolve. And this loving light, this divine love helps dissolve them because its action is dissolving. but it is held back by a barrier of the deep conviction. But as we recognize and understand the conviction, we're not as solidly convinced. We recognize it's just a historical event, something that developed in us, something that our mind believes in. The more we recognize it's just a belief, it's just an identification, the easier for us to let this love impact those things and dissolve them. But if we don't, if we believe, no, that's true, that is what I am, love doesn't have that power to dissolve it.
And I mean, it seems like there are you talked about a fear coming up, and it seems like there are two fundamental fears here. One is of the actual death of the ego, which is experienced as I'm dying. And the other is a fear, which you were speaking to, a fear of the loss of autonomy. How will I function? How will functioning occur?
Yeah, there are many fears actually. These are the two main ones. The fear of loss of what I am, and then the fear of losing life. How do I live? How do I function? Who's going to take care of things? And there are other issues too that emerge, but these are important things about the sense of separateness, sense of entityhood, which is challenged by this dimension and by all the boundless dimension. This issue re-emerges in all the boundless dimension, each dimension showing another layer of that identity. It's a very deep, strong. Then the ego has two main strong identifications. It has many identifications, as you know, thousands of object relations, self-images, all. But there are two main central ones. The boundedness, the definition, gives a size and shape and a sense of entityhood. And the other one is sense of entity, a sense of identity, feeling what I am, self-recognition of this entity. Here, the bounded dimension basically challenges the separateness. A separating boundaries that gives us the sense of being an individual, a sense of being an autonomous human being, of being a being, and that is why actually many of the non-dual teaching take the view that being a non-dual, being a separate being, is an individual being, is an illusion. Is just Advaita Vedanta calls it a convenient fiction. Convenient fiction that the divine takes in order to experience things. Which I don't buy that view, but that's their view.
But you say that the individual is an essential part of true nature that can make its appearance as appropriate, but it's still there. Is that correct?
But not as a separate.
Yes, right. As connected individuality. That's the
it really can appear in different ways and function. And that takes it to the whole other thing about, besides recognizing what is divine law, what are its properties, what are its qualities, and what it does, and all the richness and all the generosity and the flowingness and the surrender and the letting go and the transparent, all of these things. It teaches you a lot of things about what it is. And the next thing, it teaches you how life happens from that place. And there are different ways that can happen. One of them is that it can manifest the individual soul, our individual soul, but not as something an encased entity within the ocean. No, it's more like as a wave of the ocean.
Mhm.
Or as a bubble in the ocean. So it's part of it. But so the soul appears as a manifestation within the ocean, made out of the same quality of the ocean, but not separate from the ocean. And that way it can function in the world as an individual. It has all the capacities and the knowledge that the individual has had, but now not as a separate entity, but as an individual expression of this boundless love.
No, that's very well said. Yes.
See here, no separateness. The separating boundaries don't come back, but the soul comes back. But that shows us the soul doesn't have to be separate. People believe if I'm a soul, I am separate from my own entity. Actually, this dimension shows us no, that's not the case. The soul is an expression of true nature, inseparable from it, and it appears as individual, and it functions as an individual because the true nature needs an individual to experience things, to function in life. Like divine love, how is it going to live? It can't live without an individual doing things. That is one way. There are other ways.
And Hameed, it seems like at this stage there's a there's a shift in the sense of doing, that it feels like the sense of doing kind of also dissolves and life just somehow flows through. And it feels, for me, this is something I'm still trying to make sense of and live into. And I'd love to hear you speak about this.
Good. So, as I said, there are different ways how we can experience it, different, because it has this kind of realization it can manifest in functioning in different ways in terms of living. One of the one is the one I mentioned, that it can have, this ocean can manifest, can particularize itself in a certain location, and the individual soul, with our usual knowledge and wisdom and function. Now, there are two ways that can happen, from the perspective of the soul or from the perspective of the ocean of love. From the perspective of the soul, I am an individual soul functioning in life, but connected to the ocean, not separate from it, right? Not separate from it. It is my ground and it's my nature, and it sort of holds me and bathes me, but I'm an individual that expresses it as an individual. This is from a perspective of the individual. It can happen, the function, from a perspective of the ocean itself, which is the ocean can manifest the soul and function through it.
Yeah.
So you feel I am a boundless ocean functioning through an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So a person,
Does the love help dissolve the fear of losing your identity?
yeah, I mean, love is the best thing to dissolve fear, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Perfect love casts out fear. John, you should be able to give the verse and
Yeah.
You probably could.
of that.
Yeah. Love, in fact, that's what I mean. This dimension, I think, is not an accident. This teaching is the first one to arise this way because it's the one that helps more with love, with the fear, with the resistance, with holding on to certain structures and attachments and all these things. So it is panacea that way. It's a universal panacea. So as I said, now I talked about two ways of functionality. That I'm an individual that is like I'm a wave not separate from the ocean, or I'm an ocean that is functioning through a wave. But it's not really a wave, it's an individual. You see, but it's an interesting thing like, how it happens. Like you feel like if you are the ocean manifesting the wave, you feel you are the ocean, you're everything, and within you there's a particular part. You particularize yourself in a certain location that seem to do all these things that are the functions of life. There is a third way. The third way that is not related to an individual soul. And I think that's the one that most non-dual teachers usually talk about, which is that this ocean manifests everything, not just the soul. So it manifests the everything and it manifests the functioning itself. it manifests walking, it manifests cooking, it manifests eating. So it's like all these things are formation that are appearing within this ocean. So it doesn't even need it. But the only way that the soul is present is the location of the experience. Although it manifests eating, it is in your house and not in somebody else's house. Although you have the feeling, it's also eating in all other houses.
And Hameed, would this be an example of what is spoken to in so many traditions as, for example, the Chinese expression of Wu Wei, or spontaneity, or Meister Eckhart's living without a why?
Yeah, I mean, all the three ways include that, actually.
Mhm.
All of them have this sense of flow, ease, spontaneity, and freedom, and sort of smoothness of operation, like because of the flow, because the love has a sense of smoothness, delicateness, softness that is always flowing, and this flow can appear as the soul flowing, doing the thing, or flowing into the soul, or just a flow that is manifesting the whole universe, manifesting everything. And like, from that perspective, it can be this love, this ocean of lovingness that is also manifesting our talking. It appears as individual talking, but it is all the same love, the same ocean that is doing it.
And would this love also dissolve, say, the fear of death?
All fears. If the identification is not with an individual, a separate individual, who's going to be afraid of death?
Sure.
It's usually a separate individual afraid of death. And part of the fear of losing one's separateness. I mean, separate doesn't mean your definition, what you are. So by dissolving the fear I mean, dissolving separateness and the fear of it, it's a long way into, being free of the fear of death. Because death is death of the individual, but here the individual is dying. In fact, many people, when they get this fear, they're afraid they're going to die. It's not fear I'm going to dissolve or I'm going to be taken by God. No, fear I'm going to die. That'll be the end. That's how the fear appears. The terror appears as a fear of death.
Mhm. And you talk about that as most intense, this experience of love and light can be so intense that it outshines not only all boundaries and dissolves all ego structures, but that it outshines all manifestation. There is only love light.
Yes. Everything appears as made out of the same love, and it is its nature. It is what gives them form. Like love takes forms, basically. And this is an example of the formless becoming form.
Mm.
Form and formlessness are two sides of the same thing. So in this dimension, form and formlessness is the same thing, appears again because the divine love, because it's formless, has no shape or size or whatever, but it appears as the forms of the world and the form of the soul, the form of the desks or the computer, all the forms, but they are all part of it. They're not necessarily forms that are separate. They're formation within the same ocean. It's an interesting experience, an interesting sight to see.
There's the understatement of the day, Hameed.
It is sort of, I mean, interesting in a sort of magical way, you could say. that everything turns out to be is a formation out of this original substance, you see, this cosmic original substance that makes up everything. So
And Hameed, did you, I mean, you're here talking with us today again, for which we're very grateful, but at some point, did you realize from identifying in this ocean of light and love, that the individual soul, the individual Hameed, had some work to do here, and it was this truth, this teaching continued to come through you, and that gave you the purpose of being here and to share this, because you've had an extraordinary gift or whatever reason, you've seen further than most of us. A small understatement. So is that purpose also come through as an essential part of true nature, what you're supposed to do while you're sitting here living as an individual?
it depends on, I talked about the three ways of experiencing functioning. If I experience myself as a soul that is individual soul that is not separate from the ocean, it has that feeling that I have a function. I have, work to do. The work could be, cooking my meat, but also delivering a teaching. They're all, from the perspective of divine love, they're all the same. You see. But from a perspective of being in the ocean, they're manifesting everything. Everything is just in the moment. There's no thinking of the future. There isn't the perspective of what's it going to do in the future. It's just spontaneously happening in the moment. It's completely in the now. So sense of purpose and all of that is irrelevant.
I mean, I'd like to have you fill out a little more on something you alluded to, which is a particular facet of the experience of this divine love and light, and that is that you say that true nature is recognized as pure goodness, boundless, timeless, incorruptible goodness, and therefore the manifest world, which is an expression of true nature, possesses an inherent goodness.
Yeah. So this brings us back to Plato's The Good. Remember?
That's right. The truth, the highest truth.
And the major one is the good. He called it the good. He recognized why it is the good, because the lovingness shows goodness much more than any other qualities, much more than awareness or emptiness or presence, or because it's love. I mean, human being understand goodness related to love. So it feels as a pure goodness because it's giving, it's effulging, it's dissolving, it's healing, it has no malice in it. It has no malice, no negative emotion. No, it's all positivity. So the goodness is one of the contribution of this dimension. It's really the goodness of true nature manifesting itself as love. Because for human beings, love and goodness are sort of two sides of the same thing. And so you can't tell a human being goodness is consciousness. Well, it's hard for most people to buy that. But if you tell them love is goodness, most people will agree with you.
And sometimes when we do a spontaneous good thing, at least in my experience, I feel close to God. Just it's not, I didn't plan this out, but I just, connect with this human being who's, in the grocery store and figuring out how much my groceries cost, but make this connection. In that moment, fear goes away, and I feel the goodness of just being. And
Yeah.
it's very cool, very deep.
Yeah, the goodness of being, because the thing is about the sense of goodness in this dimension is so unmistakable, so palpable, so pure, so complete, so 100%. You know, it's like a goodness that make you feel happy, contented, and it makes you feel you want everybody to feel the same way. And you will do anything possible to make everybody experience the goodness, because everybody is that goodness. They just need to know it. They don't know it. So, in fact, I think this dimension is really the main force why spiritual teaching tradition teach. Why do they teach? Why do they want people to know themselves? You know, they want them to be happy. They want to be said to be enlightened. What does that mean? I mean, they don't suffer. They end up feeling happy, feeling good, feeling joy, you know, feeling fulfilled, feeling satisfied. They go beyond the world of strife, the world of struggle, the world of. And so it makes life, of course, it continues to have its struggle with challenges, but it's easier to deal with them, you know, because things are flowing and there is a trust and there is faith, as you said, and there is a sense of confidence that the goodness will prevail because it's inherently there. And however, the thing I mentioned before, that even though we feel it, it's everywhere. I don't take it to mean other people feeling it or ready to feel it. And that's why I don't necessarily believe that the goodness I my experience is going to transform anybody else I could talk to. There's still people and forces in the world are not touched by it, not aware of it, they're very far away from it. To their misfortune, of course, but they make a lot of trouble and hurt a lot of people and destroy many things. And you know, people are weird and odd and negative or hostile or murderous in many ways. And those people are disconnected from this, basically. Their sense of bondedness, a sense of being an entity is so disconnected that the disconnection it creates a distortion. Instead of love, there's hatred. Hatred is basically the opposite of love. Basically, it's really the inversion. Love shows that there's no fundamental hatred in the universe. Hatred is not a quality of being. It's a distortion of a quality of being.
Mm. Mm.
That's
Yeah.
very the recognition of that, the basic love and essential goodness is incredibly healing. And
But you see, this kind of dimension challenges some of the thing the Christian tradition takes, and many, not just as a Christian, Muslim, the other, which is they have this conviction, part of their teaching, about evil, that there is evil in the world, or some symbolized by the devil. You see, from this perspective, there's no devil. Devil is a misguided soul.
Mm.
There's no pure hatred here. The fundamental nature is good. Goodness is so inherent, so fundamental, so deep. It underlies everything. So even if there is a devil, its inherent nature is goodness.
And that's such a a dramatic reframe, Hameed. It's and very analogous to some of the deeper teachings of the monotheistic traditions and the primordial sinlessness or primordial love, or as Dzogchen would call it, primordial purity.
Yeah.
That even the most demonic forms are at in their fundamental nature expressions of this love, which is a very paradoxical thing. And I think somewhere else in the book you talk about that the intellect cannot grasp this, but one can experience it.
Mhm.
And you also point out that in the barriers that or blocks and obstacles that arise as in the face of the recognition of this pure love can even take the form of feeling demonic, that the experience of pure love can reanimate early childhood feelings of rejection and basic distrust and so forth, which can be reanimated in very intense ways, even to the sense of wanting to attack and defend against this love.
Yeah. I mean, in this teaching, we have the experience of the beast, the way I call the beast, and Christianity call it the beast. I mean, in fact, I remember when I first experienced it myself. I woke up one night, one day in the morning, and I saw in the sky, in the air, written in black letter 666.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't even know that 666, what it means. I never heard of it before. I just saw it there. And later on, I saw myself as this black, kind of powerful, negative force.
Beast.
Yeah. And I saw that as the beast. And I said, oh, that's the beast. I was the beast. And it is a process to work with it, understand it, to find out. And I found out at the deepest level that even the beast is the service of God at some deep level. It's not obvious. And that it transforms it into love.
That's very helpful, Hameed. I ran into that myself in some years ago in a retreat and had a month of a lot of experience of having these demonic feelings and motives and forces and satanic imagery. And I thought I'd contacted an archetypal level of the psyche.
Yeah.
I didn't have the kind of understanding that you were presenting. But it was a really painful month. I had multiple asthma attacks, wake up, sweating. I mean, it was not a fun month.
Yeah, you could call it archetypal in the sense as it is potential for everybody to experience. So the beast actually is an inherent part of the ego.
Okay.
The beast is a dimension of the ego. And it is a layer of love. It basically arises from childhood feeling being abandoned by goodness or by God. And there is anger. Where are you when I need you? And that develops into something, a structure, ego structure that is against God.
Can this beast be trained to be in service to the
The
good?
beast transforms basically.
Okay.
It becomes not that the beast be in service. It is in service. That's what we find out. Because when I experienced that, when I went to the depth of it, the core of it, it was love. Yeah. So and I saw even the beast wasn't serving God without knowing it. Right. But then that transforms it into just a loving expression, a powerful expression of love. I mean, that makes it black love instead of golden love. It's black, powerful, but love still sweet.
Yes.
And we haven't talked about another issue, which is that of the Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, yes, he was
Oh,
on
yeah.
the list
Java.
next. Our old friend
Oh,
Java.
boy.
The Hutt, right? You read that?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So tell us about Jabba the Hutt.
Do you remember who Jabba the Hutt is?
Yeah,
this
from Star Trek,
slimy,
Star Wars.
Star
Third movie, maybe second movie.
slimy, worm-like, obnoxious
Big
beast.
and blubbery and just pretty
Yeah.
awful looking.
Second Star Wars, and in the first Star Wars, at the end of it, Han's Solo is captured, by somebody, put them into some kind of a cubic thing, and takes it to Jabba the Hutt. So the second movie starts with a scene with Jabba the Hutt sitting there, huge, blubbery, it's like, he was big, right? He was big, huge, fat and blubbery, and the thing about Jabba the Hutt, why made me use it for this teaching, is that he just wanted everything.
Right.
And he didn't have enough. He wanted more pleasure, more food, more dancing, more power, more everything, more, everything. And he was controlling everything. He was big and powerful, but he had everybody serving him.
And he had Princess Leia in chains right next to his
He had
throne. Yeah.
right, yeah. And Han Solo there somehow mummified or into a cube, made into a cube, And of course, movies start with that. It's fun to learn about it. And turn out Jabba, the Hutt is a whole race of people. But Jabba was an evil, bad one. Not all the Hutts are like that. But Jabba the Hutt, I don't, not necessarily if all of our listeners would have known Jabba the Hutt, because that was a movie from a few decades ago. You have to have watched Star Wars, been into it, to know who Jabba the Hutt is. But the idea of Jabba the Hutt is a representation of greed. Because you're empty inside. And when you really experience the Jabba the Hutt is an actual ego structure that emerges. I felt myself as big, fatty, sort of blubbery kind of thing, greedy, wanting to eat, and wanting the thing, and wanting pleasure, wanting to touch, and like there's no end to all the thing I wanted. And then turned out it's empty inside. And the emptiness shows its unreality. So the resolution of it is to let yourself experience it, not fight it off, and try to understand it. By experiencing it and not fighting it off, it shows its emptiness and dissolves and into the love. The love becomes the fullness that fills that emptiness. But it is an important thing, because in this dimension, it's all generous, it's all giving. Jabba the Hutt is the opposite. He's big and powerful, all of that, but he acts as if he doesn't have anything. He keeps wanting more and more and more and more, you see. So that's an expression, a very concrete, powerful expression of how greed can appear. So greed is one of the things that get healed in this dimension, because
Resolved.
all goodness, all giving here. So it confronts greed, and that's how greed manifests. So the beast,
You give a very helpful and profound explanation of the way that greed emerges from the from the soul, talking about that true nature itself overflows with goodness and love and abundance, but the separate self sense is based on a worldview of discrete separate objects,
yes,
all which are divorced from true nature. And,
right.
and consequently, the sense of separation is inherently colored by the sense of lack of and impoverishment, by the separation from true nature. And consequently, there's this latent or inherent desire to recover that, but we don't know quite what we're looking for. So we take all these, what Kimball would call substitute gratifications. And
Yeah.
I'd love to have you speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ego as a whole, the ego structure, because it has imprinted the soul in a way to make it to identify with these historical or instinctual tendencies, whatever, it becomes disconnected from its nature. So it becomes empty inside. when you really let those structures come up, they're empty. They have no inherent reality, and they can dissolve if we can stay with them, and if we're not overcome by our fear or attachment. And it can manifest in any quality or through nature or presence. But the divine love specifically deals with specific things that are contrary to love. The lust and lusty greed that implies lack of richness. And this is a dimension of richness. And the hateful beastliness, which really magnify the separateness, the alienation, and also the lack of goodness, and because this dimension is goodness and giving. So it heals those specific structures, but they appear in a very dramatic, specific ways. That's the interesting thing. They don't just appear as just feeling of greed or just feeling of being bad. Those happen earlier, but that's in the first turning. Second turning appear really dramatic, similar to what the Tibetan called wrathful deities at the beginning that change into peaceful deities, right? They appear as wrathful in the sense they're negative, So I talk about two. I'm sure there are others we don't have time to talk about, but these are important for people to recognize that when they experience greed, it can appear, they can experience themselves as something like Jabba the Hutt. They could feel greed and all of that, but Jabba the Hutt, the way this dimension of love exposes greed, pushes it out as a particular ego structure.
Yeah.
So you can't just push away the greed, like get rid of the beast. You have to kind of dissolve the beast with true nature.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why, when we hear about teaching that tells you about renunciation, you just push it away or disown it or all of that, from this perspective here, we see that these things don't really work.
Yeah.
Who's going to push it away? Who's going to disown it? To push it away, to disown it, to say that's not me, you have to be a separate individual saying it. Divine love doesn't say that. Divine love just bathes everything with love.
Yeah. And Hameed, you mentioned two steps which seem really crucial and fundamental to working with all these barriers. You implied that one must not push away, but allow or even welcome these experiences as they emerge. And second, investigate them, explore them.
Yeah, we hold them, we welcome them because we're interested in the truth. Remember, the interest in the truth go through everything. So here, I mean, love and truth are not separate things. I mean, love is very the true thing, how the truth is manifesting. So, so the curiosity, the interest, and you don't explore the beast or the Jabba the Hutt or from the perspective wanting to get rid of it. You explore it from the perspective wanting to know what is it, what's it about, how come. You really want to know it. You want to know its truth, and that is more the generous attitude of love.
Yeah, you can't, the paradox, you can't inquire into these things in order to get rid of them.
Yeah. But you see, when you are in the midst of the experience, you can't feel, I want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
If the motivation wanting to get rid of it is operative, that will become an ego identification.
Yeah.
That will prevent that true understanding from happening.
Yeah. So the way I have come to understand it is whatever you're unwilling to experience in the mind sticks around until you are willing to experience it. And whatever you're unwilling to experience runs your life.
Exactly. That's what happens. I mean, even Freud said that. It becomes the unconscious that determines your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of give a summary of the process of the larger process involved with the emergence in this specific case of divine love, but in each of the boundless dimensions. As far as I can see, you point to 5 steps in a developmental process here. So maybe I can name them, and you can comment or expand. Or it seems like first you say there's a taste of true nature, and then or even a deeper immersion into it. But then what tends to happen is that evokes the blocks and barriers to it. And then as the third step, one needs to be open to and to experience and to work with those blocks and barriers until they dissolve sufficiently, or true nature or love dissolves them enough that one really oneself, the soul, dissolves into true nature. But then there's a final process you talk about of personalization. Then as you said it beautifully before, the soul recognizes its uniqueness, but does not get lost into separateness.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that emerges can be an individuated one. It can be pearly, what I call the pearl beyond price, can appear as like a pearl of divine love. A pearl made out of divine love, emerging, expressing this divine love. So that gives us a sense of capacity to function, individuated capacity to function that has integrated the experience of life.
Beautiful. And both John and I have felt in working with this chapter on divine love that it's really touched us both very, very deeply, and we feel like we received a transmission. For me, in particular, it's very important because I'm so cerebral, and opening to love and devotion have been significant challenges for me. Certainly have my blocks around that. So this chapter and these ideas and the experiences you're describing and processes of working with them have just been extremely touching, I would say, and melting in a little way.
Interesting, although this dimension of love appeared as the first dimension, love stays as the thing that really expresses the realization in all of its dimensions. Because when it comes to living, love is the expression, and the loving expression. And love includes compassion, of course, and kindness, and sweetness, and generosity, the whole heart. So regardless of what realization, what level we go to, the heart develops further. Even when we get to a dimension like the pure awareness, the heart develops further. That is the sign of a true liberation or realization, is that there's heart.
Beautiful.
So love is part of all these different dimensions.
Yes.
It's foundational. It's there.
It's there. It comes through all of them. Yeah.
Beautiful. Hameed, is there anything else you'd like to say about this topic? We've covered a lot, but is there anything else?
And one thing is that we recognize that what makes us human is the love. That you can't be really human without heart. A crocodile, for instance, doesn't have a heart. It's not a human. Human beings have heart. Of course, the heart can appear as a negative thing, hated, whatever, all emotions. But when heart expresses itself freely, openly, it is just a channel of love, channel of goodness and generosity and giving. And
beautiful.
So Hameed, do you have any last words? How do we continue to develop this connection with our true nature, with love, and manifest that? Is that again love of the truth and continuing to look inside? But it also seems that love propels us to action, to actually do things.
Yeah, that, but also to I mean, what this dimension shows is that it is a ground for experience. You know, we need to be humble. It brings in humility. Humble when we're not aware of that. Humble that we don't know ourselves completely. You know, the humility is very important for discovering the truth. That we don't know, we're not completely ourselves. You know, we're not connected completely, even though we might be connected, not completely. And that will bring more humility. And you know, the great people, the great individuals in the world have that humility in them. There's dignity and things like that. But humility is a very important part, you know.
Mm.
Even the most realized will be humble.
Mm. Yeah. Well, Hameed, this has been as usual, just an exquisitely beautiful dialogue, and I think even perhaps beauty applies even more here. And I can't resist just pointing out that in this chapter you describe beauty as
Yeah.
a transparency to true nature.
Yeah, I think the love shows beauty because love and beauty it sort of go together. You know, shows reality as beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Hameed, you've given us a beautiful gift, a loving gift, a gift of love. Um, I think John and I have been, as I said, been very touched, and I can feel myself getting teary. Am touched, are touched through this dialogue and this discussion about this dimension of true nature. So I'm sure it's going to be very, very touching for our community of listeners. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for your generosity, Hameed, and being here with us.
Hopefully,
A lot.
the love will seep into the heart of all the listeners.
And from them, their hearts into others. Yes, may it be so.
Hopefully, love will spread.
May it be so. Amen. Thank you so much, Hameed.
See you in a month or so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here I am, John Dupuy again, and I'm here to talk about supporting the Deep Transformation Podcast. The podcast has been an amazing experience for Roger and myself and for our team, and it's been growing. We're currently in the top 2% of worldwide podcasts, which is really remarkable. We think it's very important. We think deep transformation is the only way to go, because if we don't, we're in serious trouble. We're so grateful for the amazing presences and spirit and soul and people who've been on our podcast. We'd also like to ask you again for your support, financial support, and thank you for all of you who have been supporting this. And up till now, it's all been out of pocket for Roger and myself, and it takes money to produce, pay our staff, and for marketing. The circle keeps on growing, but the quicker that could happen, the more positive effect we could have in the world. And that's what we're here to do. And I was thinking before this, upstairs in my meditation room, I have the famous 10 Zen ox herding pictures up there. And the final one, after guys go through all this journey, is going back into the marketplace with open hands and open heart. So that's what we're trying. Open hands, open heart, open mind, so that we can do what? We can transform effectively and deeply and listen to some of the greatest minds on our planet as to how to do that. So thank you for your support. We love you and you matter. God bless.